Cyclone Ditwah slams India's southeast coast while Sri Lanka reels from its deadliest disaster in 20 years, with more than 330 deaths reported and hundreds missing. The Sri Lankan government has appealed for international assistance as authorities brace for major relief operations in the hardest-hit central region. And for more on the ground, we are joined by Emma Brigham, the UNICEF representative in Sri Lanka. Emma, this is being called the deadliest disaster in Sri Lanka since the 2004 tsunami. What are you seeing on the ground in terms of the scale of devastation?
Thank you. And yes, it's been a really difficult weekend for families across the island. To be honest, the scale of devastation and destruction is still becoming clear only slowly. There are many rivers and reservoirs that are still rising. And so until we have full access to the areas that have been impacted, it's hard to make a clear assessment. But it's very clear already that the complexity of and the impact, the scale of the waters, the rain, the high winds that battered the country over the weekend have impacted access to clean water. Many of the roads and bridges have been damaged, so access is much more complicated. Communications are still limited, areas are still cut off, and the search and rescue support that the Navy and others are providing are still very much underway.
Well, UNICEF works directly with children and families, but can you give us a sense perhaps of how this disaster is affecting children physically and emotionally?
Absolutely. And it's a difficult time for sure. Of course, you've got to remember that Sri Lanka is just emerging from a very devastating economic crisis as well. So families and children are more vulnerable than they were in the past. And so when this happens, they have fewer coping mechanisms that they can rely upon. It's good that actually schools were closed at the moment. So children have not been disrupted from attending schools because of this emergency, although we are concerned that many schools are being used as shelters, and obviously they'll need to return to acting as schools as well. Many families have had to leave their homes, leave their belongings, and relocate to safer areas. And this is hugely distressing for families, hugely distressing for children. So we want to make sure that those children receive the psychosocial support that they need, that the places that they are staying, the shelters, are safe for children and for vulnerable groups, including those with disabilities. We know that because families have had access to good food will become challenging in the next few days as well. So we want to make sure that children have access to nutritious supplies, food, but also nutritious supplements and micronutrients so that they don't become more food insecure in the coming weeks.
Now, you talk about access to food. There's also a third of the island reportedly without power or water. How is this impacting things like sanitation, disease risk, and child health in the shelters?
Absolutely. And actually, the wash sector, the water sector, is one that we're hugely concerned about, particularly in the central area of Sri Lanka around the city of Kandy. We know that the water reservoirs and rivers there were hugely impacted. Water supply itself has been impacted. Water services are being prioritized for hospitals and health facilities. But of course, that means that many of the shelters and families are not able to access clean water as they need to. UNICEF is bringing in water purification tablets from our supply division in Copenhagen, airlifting those in so that we can get those to where they're needed as quickly as possible. But of course, the concern that we have is that as the floodwaters begin to recede, that's when we have public health concerns because of everything that's left behind. So this is a really delicate period as the floodwaters recede and we see what the true level of destruction has been.
Now, as we reported, the Sri Lankan government has appealed for international assistance. But what message would you send to the global community about the scale of the humanitarian needs in Sri Lanka right now?
Thank you. I think, as the president said yesterday, this is the largest and most challenging natural disaster in Sri Lanka's history. And of course, Sri Lanka suffered from the tsunami in 2004. So the scale and complexity of the emergency facing this country is enormous. Please, we need support to be able to reach families and vulnerable children in a timely way. We understand that the world is a complicated place these days, but please, cyclone, those impacted by the cyclones need support, so counting on the international community to step up as it always does.
Right, Emma, thank you so much for sharing those insights. And Emma Brigham, UNICEF representative in Sri Lanka, speaking to us. Thank you.